So let's start. Number 10, the wormhole fantasy. Physics doesn't rule out time travel. Einstein's equations allow for structures that could connect distant points in spacetime. Wormholes, closed curves, shortcuts that might theoretically let you step backward or leap forward through history. The math permits it. Reality is far less generous. If you manage to navigate one of these theoretical tunnels, the problems would start the moment you arrived. Do you rewrite history and erase yourself in the process? Does the universe split into separate branches to absorb the contradiction? Or does it trap you in an endless loop where your own actions become their own cause and there is no exit? These aren't abstract thought experiments. They are fundamental collapses in causality, and physics has no clean answer for any of them. Even if the technology existed, surviving the journey is a separate challenge. The forces near anything resembling a stable wormhole would be extraordinary. Your body, your thoughts, your sense of continuity, all of it could dissolve before you cross the threshold. Wormholes, if they exist at all, are almost certainly too small, too unstable, and too destructive to pass through. There's also a deeper problem. If you arrive in the past, where does the universe put you? History has already happened. The matter that makes you is already accounted for somewhere else. You would be a contradiction embedded in a timeline that was never built to hold you. The evidence we already have tells a consistent story. Quantum particles respond to future measurements. Black holes compress seconds into centuries. Every piece of physics suggests that time has internal rules, and breaking them doesn't just create complications. It may be structurally impossible. The equations suggest a door. Everything else about how reality operates suggests it was sealed long before any civilization existed to find it. Time travel is the most seductive idea in physics. It may also carry the highest cost, not measured in years or fuel, but in everything you are. Number 9, quantum chaos. At the smallest scales we can measure, time stops behaving the way common sense demands. Particles flicker in and out of existence. They occupy multiple states at the same time. In some experiments, they appear to respond to measurements that haven't been made yet. Cause and effect. The framework your entire understanding of reality depends on starts to blur and collapse. The natural assumption is that the past drives the present and the present drives the future. Quantum mechanics doesn't respect that order. At this level, the future can reach back and influence what already happened. Events don't line up neatly, they overlap, reverse, and sometimes ignore sequence altogether. This is not an error in the experiment. This is how the universe actually works. When you zoom in far enough for a human brain, this is nearly impossible to absorb. We are built to process order. We watch one thing cause another. We age in one direction. You can think of it as dominoes. One falls, the next follows. The sequence is clear, but particles don't follow those rules. To them, before and after are not laws. They are loose suggestions that may or may not apply. This has a disturbing implication. The sense of time you rely on, the flowing now, the clear march from past to future, might not be fundamental at all. It might only emerge at larger scales, a byproduct of how complexity organizes itself. Down at the quantum level, reality operates in a completely different way, one that has nothing to do with sequence or direction. The particles that make up everything around you might not recognize the flow of time you experience every day. While you track hours and years, those particles ignore the concept entirely. Time for them is optional, a feature that only appears when enough matter gathers together and imposes order on the chaos. The foundation beneath everything you see may run on principles that have nothing to do with before and after. The smooth progression you experience from birth to death might be nothing more than a large enough system telling itself a coherent story. At the quantum level, time was never there to begin with. Number 8, the relative clock. Time does not tick the same way everywhere. It shifts depending on how fast you're moving and how close you are to something massive. The faster you travel, the slower your clock runs compared to someone standing still. The deeper you sit inside a gravitational field, the more time stretches around you. This is not theory, it is measurable, tested, and confirmed. Astronauts orbiting Earth age slightly slower than people on the ground. The gap is tiny, milliseconds over months, but instruments detect it and calculations confirm it consistently. Time is not a universal constant running at the same rate across the cosmos. It is personal, localized, and entirely dependent on where you are and how fast you're moving. Now imagine standing near something truly massive, a neutron star or the edge of a black hole. Time slows so dramatically that hours for you could represent years for someone far away. A single afternoon near such an object might stretch into decades for the rest of the universe. You wouldn't feel anything unusual. Your heartbeat would feel normal, but when you returned, everyone you had known could be long dead. This means the concept of now is not shared. Your present moment doesn't match someone else's. What you perceive as simultaneous might be staggered or completely reordered from another observer's perspective. The universe does not synchronize clocks. It never has. Even on Earth, the distortions exist. Clocks at sea level run slightly slower than clocks on mountain peaks. Every planet, every spacecraft, every living body moves through its own version of time. The idea of a universal shared schedule is fiction. Your past and your future exist differently from the perspective of everyone else in the universe. The cosmos is not running a single narrative. It is a tangle of overlapping timelines, each valid from its own reference point. There is no master clock, there never was. The tick you rely on is your version of reality, and it is no more correct than anyone else's. Number 7, the arrow of disorder. Your sense of time might exist only because the universe is falling apart. That is entropy. Ice melts, stars burn out, buildings crumble, everything moves toward disorder. And that relentless progression creates what we experience as the arrow of time, the feeling that the past is fixed and the future is open. Without entropy, time would lose all meaning. Picture a universe where every process runs perfectly in reverse. Broken glass reassembles itself, smoke flows back into candles, people walk backward into youth. There would be no distinction between before and after, nothing would ever truly move forward. Past and future would collapse into a meaningless blur. Time, as you experience it, is essentially a record of increasing disorder. Your brain notices patterns, changes, and decay. That noticing is what gives you the feeling of a flowing now. Without entropy pushing the system forward, there would be no reason to perceive a present moment. Every second you live is another step toward a more chaotic state. The aging of your body, rust spreading on metal, heat leaving a cup of coffee, these are all the same process. The universe's slow unraveling is what gives your experience its direction. You're not moving through time. You're watching disorder accumulate and calling that experience time. Even memory depends on entropy. You remember the past because it left evidence, traces in your brain, changes in the physical world. You anticipate the future because you can predict how things will continue to break down. Without that increasing disorder, cause and effect would lose their footing entirely. The next time you watch ice melt in a glass, you are watching the mechanism that gives time its direction. Entropy is the only reason you know which way is forward. Without it, the universe might exist as a perfectly static void. Nothing ever happens, nothing ever ends. The flow of history, of life, of everything you have experienced, it all rests on one thing. Things are allowed to break down, and your perception of time is nothing more than noticing the mess accumulate. Number 6, the frozen horizon. Black holes don't just trap light, they distort time itself to a degree that defies ordinary description. Their gravity is so extreme that space-time warps into conditions our minds were not built to handle. Near the event horizon, the boundary beyond which nothing returns 1 second for a person falling inward could stretch into years for someone watching from a safe distance. From the outside, objects falling toward a black hole appear to slow and freeze. Time dilates so dramatically that the falling object seems to hang at the edge forever, never quite crossing the threshold. But for the object itself, time feels completely normal. It continues falling, unaware that the universe outside has raced ahead. Two separate realities coexist at the same moment. Neither one is more correct than the other. Inside the event horizon, the situation becomes far more extreme. Past, present, and future lose coherent meaning. The singularity at the center warps time so severely that every possible direction through space-time points inward. You cannot escape. Not because you lack speed, but because every future path leads to the same crushing endpoint. The structure of time itself collapses. Events outside the black hole continue without you. Your timeline becomes isolated, severed from the rest of the cosmos. It is a stark reminder that time is not a universal shared experience. Gravity can stretch it, stall it, and warp it beyond recognition. Even light behaves strangely near these objects. Photons escaping the gravitational pull take enormous time to reach distant observers, stretching and losing energy as they climb. The steady, predictable tick of seconds you take for granted every day becomes completely meaningless in conditions like these. Time is fragile. It depends on where you are and how much mass surrounds you. Black holes make that fragility impossible to ignore. Your sense of chronology is not a fixed property of reality. It is a local condition that can be twisted beyond recognition by the right concentration of mass. And the universe contains an enormous amount of mass. Number 5, the eternal loop. Time might not move in a straight line. Some theories suggest it could fold back on itself, creating loops or cycles where events repeat. The universe might pass through endless rounds of creation and destruction, matter and energy recycling through slightly different configurations each time. Past, present, and future could overlap in ways that collapse straightforward causality entirely. Quantum mechanics describes structures called closed time-like curves, paths through spacetime that loop back to their own starting point. Think of it as a road that bends back on itself, so that traveling far enough forward eventually returns you to where you began. In such a universe, cause and effect break down. An action you take today might influence something that already happened, or perhaps it already did and you're simply playing out a sequence that was completed long before you were born. The implications are unsettling. If time loops, then certain events might be locked in permanently. Stars explode, galaxies form, civilizations rise and collapse, all of it echoing across cycles with minor variations. History at a cosmic scale could be running on permanent repeat, and no observer inside the loop would ever know. The experience of novelty, of living through something new, might be an illusion embedded inside a much larger cycle. Even more disturbing is the possibility that these loops operate without any conscious observers. The universe might cycle through events purely on its own terms. Time, as you experience it, could be a single thread in an enormous looping structure that runs whether or not anything is alive to witness it. Some versions of cosmology support this directly. The Big Bang might not be a singular origin, but one pulse in a long series of expansions and contractions. Each cycle could produce a slightly different universe, different constants, different physical laws, but the pattern never ends. Time doesn't escape. It folds back and starts over. The idea that you're moving toward an open future may be completely wrong. The cosmos might have no beginning and no end. Every path eventually circles back. And every living thing inside it is wandering through a structure where the exit was never an option. Number 4. The static block. What if the past, present, and future all exist right now? Some physicists argue that time is not a flowing river from one moment to the next. It is a dimension like height or width, and every moment that has ever happened or will happen already exists, fixed in place. Think of every event in the universe laid out like pages in a book, all equally real, none of them disappearing once you've passed them. Your consciousness doesn't create those moments. It reads them one at a time. This inverts everything you assume about existence. Memories aren't echoes of something gone. They are your brain accessing a section of the timeline that still exists somewhere in this fixed structure. The future isn't waiting to be written. It is already there, complete, just ahead of where your awareness currently sits. The feeling of moving forward, of shaping what comes next, might be the sensation of sliding along a path that was already finished before you started. Imagine every event that has ever occurred or will occur existing simultaneously. Births, deaths, disasters, discoveries, all present at once. Nothing is happening in the traditional sense. It all simply is. What you call now is just the address where your awareness currently sits. The most unsettling part is what this means for agency. The decisions you haven't made yet might already exist in this structure, fixed and waiting. The choices that feel most personal, the ones that define who you are, could be locked points in a static arrangement. The sense that you are creating your future through your actions might be a feature of consciousness, not a feature of reality. Physics offers no reassurance here. Nothing in the laws of nature rules out a block universe. Relativity, in fact, supports it. Different observers moving at different speeds slice through the structure at different angles, each experiencing their own different now. Time isn't shared, it is navigated. And the journey you think you're on may have been complete long before you took a single step. Number 3, the fractured. Now, there is no shared present moment. Most people carry the assumption that everyone experiences the same now, a universal tick that connects all beings at the same instant. Relativity destroys that assumption completely. Two observers moving at different speeds or sitting in different gravitational fields will disagree on the order of events. What registers as now for one may be past or future for another. The universe does not coordinate clocks. It never has. This isn't purely philosophical. It has practical consequences. GPS satellites have to account for relativistic time differences in their calculations, or they would drift and give wrong locations within minutes. Astronauts in orbit experience time slightly differently than people on the ground. The effect is real and built into every precise system we rely on. In more extreme scenarios, near a massive object or at speeds approaching light, the differences in experienced time stretch into months, years, even centuries. A supernova observed from two different positions in the galaxy might appear to occur at completely different times for each observer. Neither reading is wrong. Both are accurate from within their own frame of reference. Events you consider settled history might exist in a different order for an observer elsewhere in the cosmos. Something you believe already happened might not have occurred yet from another frame. Time is no longer a neat track from one moment to the next. It is a tangle of overlapping perspectives, none of them carrying more authority than any other. Even the concept of simultaneity, two things happening at exactly the same moment, breaks down under relativity. Two observers can never fully agree on whether two events were simultaneous. The concept itself may be fundamentally meaningless at the cosmic scale. Our brains demand order. They build a coherent sequence out of sensory input and call it experience. But that coherence is local, not universal. Time was not designed with conscious observers in mind. It bends and shifts according to physics alone. The shared present you believe you inhabit with everyone else is a perception, not a fact. Your now is yours alone. Number 2, the emergent phantom. Time might not exist at the universe's deepest level at all. Some physicists believe it is not a fundamental property of reality. Instead, it could emerge from interactions between particles, from entropy, from quantum entanglement, from the way complexity organizes itself. Remove those processes, and there is no ticking, no before or after, no progression. Just a static arrangement of states that never changes and never began. This isn't a fringe position. The Wheeler-DeWitt equation, a serious attempt to unite quantum mechanics with general relativity, produces a description of the universe with no time variable in it. When physicists write the equation that governs the entire cosmos, time drops out. The universe at that scale may be genuinely timeless. What you experience as flow, aging, the march of cause and effect, the sense of the present moving forward, might only exist because you are a conscious observer embedded at a specific scale. You exist in a regime where complexity generates the appearance of sequence. Step outside that regime, zoom down to the fundamental level, and the sequence disappears. Think about color. It is real to you, and it shapes how you see the world. But the physical world doesn't contain color. It contains wavelengths of light, and your visual system converts them into the experience of red or blue. Time could work the same way. A completely genuine experience built from something that at its core has no sequence in it at all. The urgency you feel, the deadlines you keep, the grief you carry over things that are gone, these might all be features of consciousness processing a timeless structure. Your brain moves through a static arrangement and interprets that movement as time passing. But there may be nothing actually moving, the clock is in your head, and the universe was never keeping one. Number 1, the grand illusion. The most extreme possibility in all of this is also the most personal. Time might not exist at all, not as something fundamental, not even as a reliable description of reality. Past, present, and future could be entirely human constructs. Mental frameworks your brain uses to navigate a universe that has no inherent sequence. The cosmos might be a vast, timeless structure, and everything you call history or anticipation might be a feature of consciousness, not of the world itself. Aging feels real, cause and effect feel undeniable. The sequence of your life carries a weight that nothing seems able to dismiss, but the feeling of a thing is not the same as the reality of it. Your brain is extraordinarily good at imposing order. It needs order to function. It builds a coherent timeline out of sensory input and presents it as reality. The question is whether that timeline corresponds to anything real or whether it is entirely internal. Physics offers no reassurance. At the quantum level, particles don't distinguish between past and future. The equations that govern space-time work equally well in both temporal directions. Nothing in the fundamental laws of nature forces time to run the way you experience it. The asymmetry you feel, the hard certainty that the past is gone and the future is open, comes from entropy and from how your brain encodes memory, not from the universe itself. The seconds you track, the years you count, the sense of moving forward through your own life, these could all be products of a mind that requires sequence to function, operating inside a universe that has none. Every clock you've ever trusted, every calendar you've ever followed, every deadline that ever made your heart race, all of it might be a tool your mind built to navigate a reality that never needed sequence in the first place. Time might be the most persuasive story the brain has ever told itself. And if that's true, then the journey from your first breath to your last was never happening. It simply is, all of it simultaneously. The most intimate experience you have might be the universe's most elaborate illusion. That's it for this one. More is coming. Subscribe so you catch it. See you in the next.